But
Anyway,
first, we're going
today we're talking
to,
about myths. We're going to do some myth busting.
yes, was I originally, the heading I originally wrote down in my notebook here is bullshit. I'm calling bullshit.
hmm
Um, but I picked a few. So the first one is the idea of the 10,000 steps.
hmm
Now, I didn't know that it was originally or that it originated as a marketing initiative.
Okay, I had heard some rumor that it was like a school project, a student or something. Anyway.
Mm. So, um, also that it was already done in the 1960s. So, why a marketing initiative? There's this Japanese company that created this pedometer, this little step counter, and in order to popularize that. Now, I think subsequent to that, there was some research done, which kind of said, yeah, you know what, can really improve our lives if we walk around 8 to 10,000 steps a day.
Mhm.
But the way that we perceive it is that there was a whole bunch of research done before and then decided 10,000 steps,
Yeah.
not 9,850 or 10,000 steps.
Yeah. But I think this is it. I
Anyway,
mean, it follows that people come up with an idea and then find the research to back it up. I mean, that's almost everything ever. Someone has a hypothesis or an idea, and then they find the studies that back up what they say.
well, or you go and do the research. If you have
Yeah.
a hypothesis, yes, you have the hypothesis, then you obviously go and do research on whether research has been done
Yeah.
to prove or disprove. But generally, by the time that somebody formulates a hypothesis, they will know whether, or that is kind of like the first step or part of I'm going to do research. But anyway, it it is something that takes on a life of its own. And now we have our phones and watches and whatever else tracking our steps
Yeah.
and congratulating us when we reach 10,000. Um, but there's no real solid science behind it. So that was the easy one. The next one is the 10,000 hours.
Oh yeah, you hear that a
Um,
lot.
yeah, because remember, became very popular from Malcolm Gladwell, the book Outliers, which made people think that, wow, just spend 10,000 hours and you're going to master whatever.
hmm
Uh, so I think in the study that was cited in the book was violin players. It would anyway. So what subsequently, and I mean, this became highly popular
Yeah.
post, and you still hear people talk about the 10,000. You must get your hours in, you must get the reps in, you must kind of do the work, and that is very, very true. But it is flawed science in the sense that it oversimplifies what makes up expertise. So you can't just put in the hours and not have, you know, deliberate practice, um, correct mentorship, or instruction, etc., etc. Um, and the idea that I mean, there are certain things. I'm interrupting myself, but there are certain things that I've done my 10,000 hours. I still friggin' suck at it. Okay. So, and I think that holds true for most people. I mean, whether you get to the 10,000 hours, I actually haven't done the calculation to see how many days. Yeah, let's do that quickly. Uh, 10,000 divided by 24, it's 416 days.
Okay.
417 rounded up. So 417 days, which is kind of like, well, if you, so it's quite a long time.
It
Anyway,
is a long time.
my point is I think there are quite a few things that most of us have kind of got 10,000 hours behind us. Doesn't mean that we have mastered anything. So it just speaks to how flawed the science is behind that, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, it's just
and
like you
then,
say, it's a random number. Why 10,000? Just someone's just picked
correct,
that number.
correct. And you see that, you know, there are people that take up um, a sport, an activity, or whatever, and they actually reach mastery in a much shorter period of time.
Yeah. Like you say,
Somebody
because
who,
of deliberate practice or mentorship or whatever.
well, and also talent.
Yeah. Genetics? Do we go into that?
Probably a little bit of that as well, you know. But the whole thing about opportunity and social, you know, all of those things, environment that you find yourself, and so on and so forth. Um, these things all play a much bigger role than we often led to believe when we and I find that the 10,000 hours is often used to tell you that you're lazy or you're not putting in the effort,
Hmm.
and that's not true. Okay,
The
um, the next one,
next myth.
yes, the the Western diet or the American standard diet.
I prefer it when you say it the other way around, standard American diet, because the acronym is SAD.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
The
The standard
standard
American
American
diet is very sad.
diet.
Yeah. That's probably the correct acronym for it anyway. But anyway, so um, I mean, this is irrespective of kind of what type of diet you follow. There is just some facts, you know, in terms of if you look at um, certain illnesses and so on, the prevalence that has really skyrocketed since the 1970s. I think
Yeah.
1978, I don't know why 78, but that seems to be a year that sticks with me in terms of, you know, when you started seeing this explosion of certain of heart diseases, of diabetes, of obesity, etc., etc. Um, and the most amazing thing is, I mean, most people are aware of the fact that uh, the lobbyists that paid off scientists to write papers with
Oh,
favorable
sugar.
findings, yeah,
Yeah.
for $50,000. That is the price. That is how much it costs to have, I don't know what the number is, but probably 2 billion obese people on the planet. Um, whatever. Anyway, so kind of looked at the microcosm of this, and I remember seeing that somewhere that the South Sea Islands is a good case study because they kind of remote enough, but they're also close enough, etc., and so on. And there's an island called Nauru, which they used to be self-sufficient, you know, fishing, farming, but they used to grow their own crops. Um, not a lot of imported stuff. And then they started mining phosphate on the island, and obviously started importing a lot of processed food, etc. The usual suspects, the sugary drinks, instant noodles, um, and whatever else. And I think also fast food became part of it. And now they have the highest rate of obesity and diabetes in the world, with almost 90% of their adults overweight or obese, and 40% of the population um, are diabetic. I mean, so anyway, so that is, it's easy to quantify because they had the statistics before the time and over a period of time. And I'm not sure exactly what the period of time when we saw this happen. But even in America, somewhere around the mid 70s, you started seeing um, certain of these illnesses, which are now so common, started kind of becoming, you know, more more prevalent. I'm thinking of things like, yeah, the other big one is obviously also Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So the cognitive kind of decline, the diseases responsible for cognitive decline.
Is there no correlation between that and when doctors started prescribing statins for cholesterol?
Well, statins, yeah. So first of all, I mean, there's obviously that thing about the demonization of, you know, meat and fat, and kind of getting us off of what we were used to. Um, there's actually a very good graph by a doctor whose name I now can't remember. It kind of shows how seed oils, the use of seed oils, um, became more common and was actually made part of the, what we should eat, and the demonization of. So I sound like a conspiracy theorist when I say things like the demonization, but that is exactly what happened. Animal fats were
Yeah.
demonized.
I also,
Um, so, so yes,
yeah,
definitely that correlation. Just to answer your question, which obviously then led to, well, now you must start taking statins
yeah,
to lower your cholesterol, because cholesterol also became the enemy. Which, fortunately, there's a lot of research now showing that that is not the case. But
yeah.
it's going to take decades for that perception to be changed.
Yeah, I've heard Dr. Anthony Chafee talking about some of those studies and how there's proof that the studies were falsified or there were lies in them, and
Mm,
how people still rely on them. Like there's no like
correct.
wiping it out and clearing the slate and starting again from it's kind of like it was out there and it was public and so many people bought into it that now it's very hard to put the genie back in the bottle, I suppose, or to like take back the things that were said or that were taught. And so people just continue to preach that fat is bad for you, that women need sugar because of our cycles and all like, I don't know.
Yeah, look, it is very difficult. Now, I understand that, you can have varying opinions about this. Um, but the fact that the people are just turning a blind eye to some of the facts that are right there in front of us,
Yeah.
and because it's not our field of expertise, etc., and it kind of touches on another myth that I want to bust uh, a little bit later, which is about trust.
Yeah.
We we trust our healthcare professionals, or we used to. I
Yeah.
think more and more people are starting to wake up to that and taking more responsibility for their health. But by and large, if a doctor tells you to do A, B, and C, you think that that comes from a very good place,
Yeah.
and some science. What we've learned is that, especially when it comes to nutrition, they know less than the average person about the
Yeah.
subject.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the myth obviously is that there is this one diet and
Mm.
that fat is bad for you and that you should eat A, B, and C. Um, terrible, terrible advice. Um, shall we go to the trust one quickly and then come back to
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
to so like I said, there's so many cases where we've kind of seen that we cannot trust the government
Mm-hmm.
or any government related institution, or actually is it all institutions? I think it's general lack of trust in all institutions. And so this wonderful little quote of from Ronald Reagan that said that the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Now, if if the president of a country said that those are the scariest words, um, then I think we should take it seriously.
Yeah.
And we have been. I mean, that's probably one of the good things that came out of the whole coronavirus pandemic mess is the fact that people saw that institutions cannot be trusted,
Yeah.
um, and for two reasons. One is that they don't necessarily have the facts or the knowledge, and the second one is that they obviously um, incompetent.
Is them wanting to control people in the population not part of it too?
Um, yes, I think there are a lot of people that get satisfaction out of I am in control of. But there's a bigger conspiracy or a group that work together to control. I'm not sure if I buy that.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because just getting people to come together and execute a plan is like very difficult. So, if it's 3 people, it's maybe you can still do it. 10 people, oh, that takes a lot of work. We just saw on the weekend, we know how much effort and preparation, etc., goes into preparing a rugby team to go and compete and be successful.
Yeah.
But there you're talking about 23 players plus, let's say that's 50 people, but that takes like a lot of resources. Anyway, so people from different backgrounds, etc., I don't know. Most certainly in a particular government, in a particular country, yes, I think that there is whoever is ruling at that point in time, and we saw that basically play out in every country. That that sense of superiority, and we will make rules for you to follow, and we will have our own set of rules. Um, so, but the it also plays into the idea or the concept of the fourth turning. I don't know if you're familiar with the book, The
You've
Fourth
mentioned it to me
Turning.
before.
Neil Strauss and Howe. Neil Howe. Um, So anyway, it's kind of like these cycles of between 80 and 100 years, which he believes that civilizations go through. And I think that there is one part of it. Now, that's probably something that we can come back to at another time, is kind of talk about the, the, the four different cycles and see if we can identify whether we agree with that we are in the fourth cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I think that part of what, according to Strauss and Howe, happens in the fourth turning is that there is a lack of trust in institutions.
Yeah.
And one can speculate about why that is and so on. But for one, I'm really happy to see that less people trust institutions, whether they are local governments, national governments, and some of these, I don't know, global organizations like the World Health Organization, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or the International Monetary Fund, or whatever they supposed to be. I think it's good that we don't trust those organizations anymore, and even corporates, because that's the other thing that we saw in this debacle is that you cannot trust, in this case, the pharmaceutical companies
Yeah.
to, even though you think that this is a capitalist institution, and if they screw things up, shareholders will punish them and it will be bad for their business. They were able to get away with it because they colluded with governments and these other organizations. So I think it's a very good thing that people are very skeptical about all sorts of institutions. Do you trust? Is there an institution that you trust?
Um, not that I can think of.
It's very difficult to find one. If you try
Yeah.
to think objectively, I try to think objectively about these things as well. Go, which institution do I trust? And it's unfortunate and
Yeah.
it's sad in a way that we can't find one.
No, I can't think of anything.
Anyway, so the last one here on my list in terms of myths I want to bust is the concept or idea of multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, what is the first thing you think of when somebody says multitasking?
I don't know, I don't know, working on two projects at the same time.
Yeah. So that's one thing. So obviously, while doing multiple things at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's impossible. Well, not quite impossible, but there are certain simple things that you can do, two things at the same time. You can drive your car and listen to the radio at
That's
the
what I was
same
going to
time.
say. I can go for a walk and listen to a podcast or
Correct. Um, so they are basic little things, but from a task perspective, we cannot work on two projects at exactly the same time. You have to put one down and then
mm-hmm.
go to another. So the other thing that's also very common is when you say to somebody multitasking, they go, yeah, it's been proven that women are better than men at multitasking, which is also not true. What is interesting is that big five personality traits, there are some of those personality traits that correlate with the idea or notion of somebody being better at multitasking or not. It's not necessarily just male and female.
Mhm.
And it makes a lot of sense that women generally are perceived as better multitaskers because of the variety of responsibilities
Mhm.
that they assume or that are assigned to them in the normal in normal society.
I'm watching you
Let me
dance around the topic. I actually was just
um,
listening to Gad Sad on Stephen Bartlett's podcast talking about
yes,
these topics that you, especially for him as a evolutionary psychologist, that,
yeah.
if you want to end your career, these are the things that you focus on. Gender
Yeah,
differences being one of them, biological gender differences.
yeah. So I'm obviously very comfortable
Yeah,
pointing some of these things out and so on because I don't like the fact that people are pigeonholed based on certain things,
yeah,
but I also don't like perpetuating or spreading the bullshit
yeah,
if it's not the case. Um, so the idea that um, women are generally, what is the very first one? Agreeableness. Women are more agreeable,
yeah.
and then the two sub traits there. Anyway,
I can't
um,
remember them.
oh, that is annoying that I can't remember them either. Um,
I can
but
have
the
a look.
point is that those two, those traits are the traits that are really important in a nurturing role.
Yeah,
So it makes more sense for women to generally kind of score higher in those traits.
yeah,
And I think it's the same traits that kind of make up the um, perception that women are generally better at multitasking. But on a on a base level, is as humans we are not that good at multitasking. We
What,
and I
why
can't
does
remember.
multitasking get lauded as something that's good anyway?
Yeah,
I don't know
I
why
was
it's
just
like
going to
a
say
good thing to do.
I can't remember when this became, you know, a thing
Yeah.
in terms of when you talk about people's work performance and so on, when you were either expected to multitask
Yeah, that's in every job
or
description I've ever read, I think. Ability to
it,
multitask.
it's also, in my opinion, just a basic requirement of being a self-sufficient human being
Yeah,
to multitask. But the notion that you can do two things at exactly the same time and produce an equal outcome.
yeah,
Anyway, so I prefer focus on something and don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to, um, and I don't mean that in the deliberate way, but thinking that I'm good at multitasking or not.
yeah. Is that all your
Anyway,
myths busted?
those are those are my all my myths. I can't even remember. I was doing something else and I started making this list, and I just thought that
Yeah,
you know what, these are things that kind of irritate me in terms of the um, um, why these things still take up so much space and time in
yeah.
the conversation.
I think especially because of the journey I'm on with carnivore lifestyle, the standard American diet or Western diet one is a big one. And just the more and more research and things that I find about the foods that we eat just kind of makes you a bit angry that it's gotten to this point. Um,
Yeah, it is frustrating. I tell you, just kind of, stories that you hear, and this has got nothing to do with what kind of diet anybody is following. If you hear people, um, and I've had a couple of cases in the last couple of weeks where I spoke to somebody, and they go, "Well, my doctor is now um, not sure what the cause of this was,
mhm,
but now suggested that I go on on some statins."
mm,
And I think to myself, how can you? And you're actually taking these things?
yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't really know what else. Well, no, lifestyle change was, and then in another case was, you know, doctor also not knowing what the cause of a particular condition or ailment was, and then change suggesting a diet change based on no explanation or no scientific facts or
yeah,
anything.
yeah,
And that frustrates me about this is that, you know, people get away, or healthcare professionals get away with shit like that.
yeah. Well, there's
And
actually
they shouldn't.
another myth that I thought I would just add to the mix, just because again, it's something that I saw
Yeah?
on Instagram. Doctor, I think her name is Casey Means, could be wrong.
Yes?
But she was talking about how the biggest lie we've been taught by society and medical industry and all this is that hyper specialization is better than a generalist or a general practitioner, someone who looks at the body as a whole. Because you've got,
Yeah,
for example, I go to an endocrinologist and someone goes to a whateverologist and a this doctor and a that doctor, and they're only focused on that one little thing, but the whole body
correct.
works together. And something, I mean, I know the thyroid is supposedly the cause of a bunch of problems in the body, so an endocrinologist might be a good one, but that they're only focused on their one little thing, and it could be something
Yeah,
somewhere else that's causing the problem, and you need to look at the body as a whole because it's one system, it's not 100 separate pieces.
correct.
Yeah.
That is very true, yeah. Anyway, um, any other myths that you can think worth busting?
Can't think of any more off the top of my head, but we could always revisit myths another time.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we said we'll chat about apps. What are our favorite and what are our least favorite?
That could be quite a fun,
Most,
different topic.
that could be a very different topic, yeah.
Yeah,
And then we also said that we'll maybe look at the fourth turning,
yeah. I
and
must maybe get
whether we
myself
are
a copy
actually in it.
or
That's
ask
quite interesting,
ChatGPT
yeah.
about it.
Yeah, I think start there because I think it's um, I can't remember exactly how many. I listened to the audio book, and it was quite a while ago. But Ray Dalio also talks about a similar concept in terms of the rise and fall of civilizations.
Okay,
So it's quite interesting if you kind of look at both of these books, um, and quite a lot of overlap between them.
cool. Let me write that down before I forget it. Mm,
I'll share one or two resources with you on
sure.
that.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Until next time.
Thanks.
Thanks, Herman.